Part of me can't believe I've never played or even paid attention to any of the games in this franchise, but the other part is excited to dive deep into what seems to be the definitive version of Ninja Gaiden 2. Thursday afternoon, Xbox hosted their developer direct showcasing games we've seen before with a closer look, like South of Midnight, Claire Obscure Expedition 33, and Doom the Dark Ages. But before that, they started the show off with a bang, announcing the long-awaited sequel to this franchise releasing in the fall, Ninja Gaiden 4. Then immediately after, Shadow dropped Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, a remaster of Ninja Gaiden 2. It was rebuilt in Unreal Engine 5, so I guess this would be a remake, though Team Ninja seems to call this a remaster. I guess since they reused the animations, it is one. But then so did The Last of Us Part 1. I don't really know anymore, it's all just semantics at this point. Either way, I'm having a hell of a time playing this. As far as the story, the lore, and the characters go, it all seems really interesting, but also extremely dense and comprehensive, to the point where I'm more or less lost and barely have an idea of what's going on at times. It doesn't help that I'm starting with the second game in the series, but I did do a little bit of research and digging into the story and the lore so far up to this point. I think I have a general grasp of it, but again, it's very long and comprehensive, so certain things are bound to be lost on me. But none of that really matters, because the gameplay and the combat is what the series is really all about. If you've never played a Ninja Gaiden game, like me, but have played other action games, I'd say the combat feels a lot like Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, and other hack-and-slash games. But unlike those, you need to be more calculated and strategic with your attacks. Simply swinging away and button mashing isn't going to cut it. Blocking is key, and learning how to effectively do so will save you more times than you can count. Also, dashing and dodging does help a lot too, but I'd suggest focusing on blocking first and learning how to chain combos. I mean, to an extent you can button mash, but you still need to have some level of strategy because this game isn't playing. It's actually quite challenging, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe once upon a time, long before the Souls games, it was denoted as one of, if not the hardest games of all time. But every swing and thrust feels fluid and responsive and satisfying. And though it is a challenge, every enemy you slash through feels rewarding. You don't feel OP just for the sake of it. You feel skilled and masterful. This game really makes you feel like a ninja. But no, seriously, this is just pure fun, and the weapons you pick up along the way keep it from getting stale. It's really fun to experiment with different weapons because it gives you almost a different playstyle, and you'll find some weapon types are more effective than others. But it's also important to visit the shops when you come across them and upgrade them, so that you have a heavy-hitting arsenal that you can swap between at your disposal. One of my personal favorite weapons though are the claws, because it's a bit more chaotic, and I mean, you're basically Wolverine. It's awesome, and I really hope that this is how Insomniac's game will feel in a few years. The boss fights feel incredible and crushing. Like, they never give you enough time to prepare for how they'll rush you and nearly take you out in an instant. But like any other boss fight in a game, after some time, you'll learn their patterns and what weapon types would be most effective against them. Weapons build up your ki gauge and unleash a different ninpo attack. It can be somewhat helpful, but I rarely found myself ever using it, though that may change as I progress through the game. The map traversal and overall feel of the game reminds me of the original God of War games on the PS2, slashing through enemy after enemy, collecting orbs with lots and lots of gore and dismemberment. Though of course this makes sense given that these games did come out during their releases. It was within the same era. But we're not really here to talk about the game itself like we do with most other reviews. We're trying to see how this game stacks up against other versions and whether or not this is a good remaster. From what I can tell, it's mostly just a visual overhaul, but there are at least a few other notable changes from version to version. The original version of 2 released back in 2008, then a year later they released Sigma 2. While the story remains the same, the differences between the two are pretty stark actually. The most significant change? The amount of enemies. Sigma 2 greatly reduced them, which also makes it much easier by a large margin. A lot of people seem to hate that change, but personally, I think it's for the better, because from what I've seen from the original, it seems incredibly chaotic. But I haven't played the original since it's not on Game Pass, but I did try out Sigma to compare, and it's nearly the same experience as Black. But even then, there are some pretty subtle differences. Going back to Sigma after getting started with Black felt like a lesser challenge. I figured maybe it was because I had grown used to the controls by now, and I was already several chapters into Black, and while that may be partially true, apparently the number of enemies in Sigma are still fewer. Yes, that means that they've added more enemies to Black to give it a bit more of a challenge, but not to the extent of the original either. I really think this is a sweet spot, because I found myself needing to take small breaks in between chapters, given how intense it was even then. I can only imagine how it was with the original. Non-stop adrenaline, I bet. But still, the enemy count seemed far too many. It's hard enough to keep track of Ryu in the crowd sometimes, as it is, so I'm glad it's not to that level. I'd also imagine performance would slow down a ton if we had this level of fidelity with that many fast-moving enemies on screen. But hey, if you like the difficulty and the challenge, you can always play on one of the harder settings. Like Sigma 2, in Black, they've also included additional chapters with additional playable characters, Momoji, Ayane, and Rachel. They've also kept some of the added bosses, but also removed a few. And unlike Sigma 2, there is no race mode, but at least dismemberment and gore have returned. I have no idea why that was even removed in the first place. Aside from these, however, it mostly stays the same, except, of course, the graphics and the updated UI. Performance-wise, it seems to target 4K 60, and as fluid and fast-paced as this game is, I'm glad I hadn't seen any notable frame drops, glitches, or any performance issues at all. The 60 frames seems to be stable at least. If anything dips, it's the resolution, not so much the frame rate. But I'm playing this on an Xbox Series X, so whether it's up to snuff on other platforms, I'm not entirely sure. But from the looks of it, anyway, it runs just as well on the PS5, and surprisingly quite well even on the Series S. The verdict here is that Ninja Gaiden 2 truly feels like a definitive version of the game, blending the best aspects of its predecessors while introducing modern enhancements that make it more accessible to newcomers and satisfying for returning fans. Team Ninja's approach has redefined what made the original great while balancing the accessibility changes introduced in Sigma. The original game will always hold a special place for purists who appreciate its chaotic intensity and brutal difficulty, but Black strikes that perfect sweet spot, maintaining the challenge while dialing back the overwhelming enemy count to a much more manageable, yet still adrenaline-pumping level. Meanwhile, Sigma remains a solid alternative for those who already earn it, especially through the Master Collection, despite its divisive design changes. What sets Black apart is how it incorporates the best of both worlds, reinstating the gore and dismemberment missing from Sigma, rebalancing the enemy encounters, and adding a sleek modern overhaul with revamped graphics and performance powered by Unreal Engine 5. Whether you're a longtime fan or a newcomer, this version delivers a visceral, polished experience. I mean, look, I enjoyed this game so much, I've held off on another review I'm working on just because of how much I'm loving this. If that's not an indication, I don't know what is. And the best part? It's available on Game Pass, so there's no reason not to give it a shot yourself. But if you've been curious about the Ninja Gaiden series, or just looking for some challenging, fast-paced action game, this is the perfect opportunity to dive in, and one that I wholeheartedly recommend.